Or this computer froze. Can you still hear me, Lillian and Rosaline?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see my screen at all?
No.
Is it one giant black screen?
Uh,
Or are you just listening? See what we can do here. Um, Alright. We're having some technical difficulties on the smartboard screen. Oh, here we go. Hopefully, by closing that and reopening it will solve the problem. Alright, bear with me for 2 seconds as I reload my slide. And as we continue on. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay. Back on track. Yes, we're talking about the Meech Lake Accord and our Prime Minister Brian Mulroney during this time period. So as you recall, remember how I said that the province of Quebec did not sign the Constitution Act? So what Brian Mulroney did was that he presented something called the Meech Lake Accord. And with the Meech Lake Accord, the main purpose of this act was to please or make Quebec, the province of Quebec, happy. Okay, so what the Meech Lake Accord did was that it stated that it recognized Quebec, okay, the province of Quebec, as a distinct society. Distinct society. Okay, it recognized Quebec as a distinct society, otherwise recognizing the province of Quebec different from everyone else. Okay, we have talked lots about French Canadians or French speaking Canadian and how they have different point of views and have a different identity compared to the English speaking Canadians. We have looked at the Quiet Revolution and how that was significant. Okay, so with the Meech Lake Accord created by Brian Mulroney, again, it recognized Quebec as a distinct society. Okay, otherwise stating that Quebec is now different compared to everyone else. Okay, so with that being said, is that fair? Some may say yes, some may say no. Okay, so what happened was that this man right here, Elijah Harper, don't know if you recognize his name, Elijah Harper fought for Aboriginal rights. Okay, he fought for Aboriginal rights. Okay, he stated that if Quebec and French-speaking Canadians were being treated differently as a distinct society, why can't First Nation, Indigenous, Aboriginal people be recognized as distinct society as well? So why can't we? It's what Elijah Harper presented. Okay, he stood up, voiced his opinion, and said that this is not fair. If Quebec is being recognized as a different society or distinct society, why can't Aboriginal people have the same right? Okay. Again, discrimination, unfair treatment is being circulated with the Meech Lake Accord. So in the end, Mulroney's Meech Lake Accord was never passed. It was never passed. Okay. Therefore, to this day, Quebec is not recognized as a distinct society. Okay. Okay. You could thank Elijah Harper for stepping up and fighting for Aboriginal rights. Okay. So again, on your next assignment, assignment 8, there will be a question in terms of Brian Mulroney and what you think of this man, etc. Okay, so just keep that in mind. as you continue to listen to today's lesson. Okay? You'll see Brian's Maroney name pop up once more throughout this lesson. Oh, and look at that. It's on the next slide. Brian Maroney again. Brian Maroney. All right. So, are any questions at this point in the lesson? Any questions? Everything makes sense so far? Just want to apologize for the technical difficulties with my smartboard screen. It just suddenly froze and didn't want to work no more, but it is working now. It is working now. Okay, so you're following along and with your textbook. I am now on page 22. Okay, under free trade. We'll just finish page 21, looking at the Constitution Act and the Meech Lake Accord. So we're going to move on and continue looking at the free trade. Free trade. Again, we're still looking at Brian Maroney, Prime Minister during the late 1980s. So in 1994, a treaty agreement was signed and passed. Okay, it was known as NAFTA. Okay, it was known as NAFTA, which stands for North American Free Trade Agreement. Okay, capital N, capital A, F, T, A, NAFTA for short, stands for again North American Free Trade Agreement. It was negotiated and signed in 1994, again with Brian Maroney. Okay, so what this act was, what this agreement was, what this treaty was, it was between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. These three countries here in North America, again, Canada, United States, and Mexico, signed this agreement stating that we can now trade goods and products back and forth without paying taxes, or trying to eliminate as much tax purposes as possible. This was the goal of NAFTA. Okay? So again, some people supported it, some people didn't support NAFTA. Okay, again, some people liked the idea of NAFTA, some think it was positive and it's great to have. And on the other hand, some people thought it wasn't really beneficial. Okay? So again, there's pros and cons, okay? Good and bad. Okay, right here. The good and bad. I'll write that right here. Okay, so there's positive influences and negative influences or consequences that needs to be taken into account and looking at NAFTA, this free trade agreement. Okay? So again, I just already mentioned one positive aspect of NAFTA. Again, it states that this agreement states that Canada, United States, and Mexico are now allowed to trade products or goods or items back and forth without paying taxes. Okay, that eliminates taxes or reduce it or trying to eliminate it. Okay, so again, that's one positive. Okay, again, some people support it, some did not. So some negative or some non-beneficial factors can be, again, businesses in the United States or in Canada may move to Mexico as they can produce their products at a much cheaper rate. Okay, so again, businesses in Canada and the United States may move to Mexico so that they can produce their product at a much cheaper rate because paying workers in Mexico is much cheaper than paying workers here in Canada or the United States. Another bad or negative consequences that people brought up was that American companies are now operating in Canada. Okay, as a result of the stronger American dollars. Okay, that is why we have American stores and American businesses here in Canada operating. Okay, again, not a factor due to NAFTA. Another American influence in Canada, again, is bringing their businesses and their investments here in Canada. This is known as something called the branch plants. Okay, some thought that this is significant as a lot of Canadian businesses will now be overtaken by American businesses. Okay, so some people thought that here in Canada we'll have more American influences, more American stores, more American, culture, identity, politics, economy. Okay, that's another negative aspect people thought about NAFTA. Okay, again, we'll look more about NAFTA and this free trade uh, more when we switch gears and looked at geography of next week. Okay, so again, NAFTA will come up again later on throughout this course, throughout this term, probably sometime next week. Okay, when we looked at human geography. Okay, so again, just a little snapshot of why NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, is significant in its purpose. Okay, again, it consists of Canada, the United States, and Mexico in this free trade agreement. Okay, free trade agreement. Okay. All right, moving along. We're gonna continue. So again, as promised, my goal was to integrate as much Aboriginal and Indigenous contents in this course as possible. Again, you won't see these notes or this information in your textbook, but again, it relates to our time period. It relates to Canadian history. Okay, so I just want to quickly mention some key points in terms of First Nations and Aboriginal in the 1980s. 1980s. Okay. So Aboriginal voice, Aboriginal people. Okay, again, they voiced their opinion. They stood up and started talking. Okay, there was now more public awareness in terms of residential school situations starting in the 1980s. Okay, prior to this, not many people know a lot about Aboriginal culture or their struggles or their identity, etc. Okay, but starting in the 1980s, okay, more public awareness increased in terms of the concerns and the situation in regards to residential school. Okay, however, it took our Canadian government another 20 years before the federal government apologized in terms of the situation regarding residential school. Okay, residential school started, even in the early 1900s and carry on. Okay, but it took the government another 20 years when this public awareness increased for the federal government to even say something, and they finally apologized. Okay, and they finally apologized. So our former Prime Minister Stephen Harper on June 11th of 2008, he apologized in regards to the situation here in Canada in terms of residential school. And he said this, and I quote, "I stand before you to offer my apology to former students of Indian residential school," end quote. So yes, our former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, this man right here, said this. He finally apologized and recognized that yes, Canada, the Canadian government made a mistake and apologized for the act in terms of residential school. Okay? Again, this all started around in the 1980s in the 2000 period. Okay, just to recap right here on my slide, if you can see it, in 1867, when Canada became a nation, came into confederation, many Europeans or Eurocentric Europeans, Canadians, were confident and felt that Aboriginal people would become absorbed into mainstream Euro-Canadian society. They thought that all First Nations, Indigenous people will be absorbed into mainstream English European society. However, after 148 years, this did not happen. Nope, it did not happen. Okay, Aboriginal people, First Nation people, to this day, still have their identity and their culture. Okay, the key to their survival was adaptability. Okay, they were willing to adapt. Okay, so First Nations in the 20th century learned how to become a part of Canadian society without compromising their cultural identity. They did not lose their identity. Okay, they did not lose it. After all this, you know, challenges and barriers that faced them, they did not lose their cultural identity. They always knew who they were or where they come from. I think this is significant whether you're First Nations or Aboriginal or not. I think it's always significant that you look back at your heritage, your culture, and learn where you come from and your background. Okay? This is all significant and still relates to Canadian history today, okay, present day, as again, First Nations, Aboriginal people are still voicing their opinion and still telling the story to the rest of Canada so that we can still now spread and learn from their culture. Okay? Again, this all started, late 1980s and early 2000s. All about this recognition and awareness start to increase, and we're still increasing to this day, Okay? Again, that's just a little bit of background content in terms of indigenous contents, in terms of this time period that we're talking about, and how it relates to modern day Canadian society. Okay? Questions? Questions at all? All right. So we're moving along great. We're progressing great. Everything's going on excellent. I'm still on page 22 of your textbook near the bottom. We are going to slightly switch topics and talk about women. Okay? Canadian women in terms of politics. Okay, or political politics. Okay, but again, we're looking at women. Okay, again, we have talked numerous amount of topics in regards to Canadian women, immigrant women's starting in their 1900s, and their influences. Again, we're gonna come back and look at women, Canadian women in politics. Okay, again, this is on page 22 of your textbook, and it goes all the way to page 24 of your textbook. Okay, if you're following along in your textbook. Okay, so again, we're looking at women. Okay, but more specifically in politics, Canadian politics. We're going to have two key categories right here. We're looking at Canadian women in terms of Governor General and Prime Minister. Okay, again, you will see we'll be talking about these four individuals. Okay, Okay, one, Jean Sev, Gina Clarkson, Michelle Jean, and Kim Campbell. Okay, these are the four women we're going to be talking about. Okay, we're going to talk about one, Jean Sev, two, Gina Clarkson, three, Michelle Jean, and four, Kim Campbell. Okay, in your textbook, it does talk about these four ladies and why they're significant. Again, I'm going to take some time now to go over each of these four individuals. Again, Jean Sej, Gina Clarkson, Michelle Jean, and Kim Campbell, and why they are important Canadian women in terms of politics. Okay? In terms of Canadian politics, why they are significant. Okay? However, before we begin, again, I'm going to talk about the roles, the duties of Canadian Governor General and the role and the duties of Canada's Prime Minister. How they are different, and how they are significant. Okay? Some may argue that the role of Canada's Governor General is more important than Canada's Prime Minister's role and duties. Okay? You can decide, you can judge for yourself. Okay? But it can be argued that the Governor General is the significant person in terms of Canadian politics. Okay, so the role of the Governor General of Canada. Okay, I got some examples here on my screen. So the Governor General of Canada acts as the Queen's representative here in Canada. They are the head of state. Okay, which means that they relate back to the Queen in terms of our Queen, our head of state. The Governor General also give royal assent to pass bills in the House of Commons. Yes. Okay. They can also sign state documents. Otherwise means that yes, the Governor General can pass laws, they can agree to it, they can sign off, and boom, it is now law. Okay. They have that power to do so. They also read the throne of speech, which is read in the House of Commons. They can also appoint court judges. Okay, governor generals are often selected or appointed by the prime minister here in Canada, and the governor general is often in power or in office, I should say, usually for 5 years. Okay, so after every 5 years, there's a new governor general in Canada. Again, significant role here in Canadian federal politics, and the role of the Governor General. Again, acts as the Queen's representative. They also do give royal assent to pass bills. So again, it can be argued that the role of the Governor General here in Canada has a more significant factor than our Prime Minister. Okay, so let's look at the role of Canada's Prime Minister. Okay, we have talked lots about different Prime Minister in the past. Uh, Alfred Laurier, Mackenzie King, uh, Robert Borden, Pierre Trudeau. Here today, Brian Mulroney. Okay, lots of significant uh, Prime Minister during our time period. Okay, there's many, many more. Okay, but again, those are just some examples of Prime Minister we have talked about. Okay, um, do we know who is Canada's Prime Minister today? Do we know who that is? Who is Canada Prime Minister today? Do we know? Do we know who that is? Lillian or Rosaline?
Justin.
Yes, that is right. That is correct. Yes. Justin Trudeau, yes, is our Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau, yes. We have talked lots about Trudeau in terms of his father, Pierre Trudeau. But yes, Justin Trudeau is our new Prime Minister. So, the role of Canada's Prime Minister, again, is the head of government here in Canada, provides leadership, directions in terms of government, selects member to be in cabinet and appoints executive members such as judges, and they also explain policy and programs that he and his party creates. Okay, again, our prime minister is just the head figure of the Canadian government, provides leadership and direction for government and how it wants to proceed and move forward in the future. Okay, as a result, he must be able to explain policies and programs created. Okay. What is going on here? All right, we also got Kendra. I see that Kendra's name is on here. Hello, Kendra. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with my computer today. Okay, we are going to continue and looking at our 4 Canadian uh, women today. Okay, again, there are 4 of them, 4 significant key Canadian women in terms of politics. Okay, we're going to start things off by looking at Jean Sève. Jean Sève. She was, okay, Canada's first Governor General of Canada. I will repeat, Jean Sève was Canada's first Governor General of Canada. Okay, first ever. Never happened before. She was the first one. Okay, and we have talked lots about women in terms of their struggles and their political powers in the past, but she was the first one. Okay, first one to be appointed as Governor General of Canada. Okay, so when she was in office, she really focused on youth and world peace. Before she was Canada's Governor General, she worked as a CBC journalist for over 20 plus years. But again, what made Jean Sève significant, can I recognize this name right here, is that she was the number one, first ever female Governor General of Canada in 1984. Okay, first one. Okay, she broke down all the barriers and challenges in terms of being part of Parliament and in terms of Canadian government. She was the first woman again to be Governor General of Canada. Okay, Jean Sève. Okay, Andrea Clarkson. Yes, Clarkson. She was also Canada's Governor General of one time. Okay, she was also Canada's Governor General at one time in 1999. Okay, what made Gina Clarkson significant was that she was the first person of a visible minority to be recognized as Governor General of Canada. Okay, first person of a visible minority to be recognized as Canada's Governor General. Okay, she was born in Hong Kong, came to Canada as a refugee. Again, also worked at CBC as a writer and a host. Again, she really focused on military, the North, and she also visited Aboriginal communities. Okay, but again, Gina Clarkson, significant. She was also at one time Canada's Governor General, but first person of a visible minority. Okay, significant person right here as well. You'll see her name come up again as well. Gina Clarkson. Okay, moving along. Next person, Michelle Jean. Michelle Jean. Again, she was also at one time, more recently, Canada's Governor General. Okay, she was born in Haiti. Really emphasized issues on youth, Aboriginal Canadians, military arts, fought for violence against women. Again, she was also another key Canadian woman in terms of politics, as she was also, again, at one time, more recently, Canada's Governor General at one time. Okay, Michelle Jean. Right here. Okay? Again, in your textbook, it does talk more about these individuals and why they're important. Okay, and lastly, number 4 on our list, Kim Campbell. Kim Campbell. Why was Kim Campbell significant? Well, Campbell was Canada's first ever, okay, Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, Kim Campbell, first female Prime Minister of Canada. This is why she is significant. Okay, she wasn't Governor General, but she was Prime Minister, first ever female Prime Minister of Canada. Okay, so give you a bit of background content how Kim Campbell became Prime Minister of Canada in 1993. She wasn't our Prime Minister very long. Okay, not many people know about Kim Campbell. Okay, so what happened was that our good friend right here again, Brian Mulroney. Okay, Brian Mulroney. Okay, he was Canada Prime Minister again in the early 1990s. He decided to retire while he was still Prime Minister of Canada. Yes, he stepped down, retired, decided one day, yep, I no longer want to be Prime Minister of Canada. As a result, Kim Campbell became the leader of that party, and she became Prime Minister of Canada for probably about a year, 1994. Okay. While Kim Campbell was in office or in power, she really emphasized and improved on the criminal code of Canada. Okay. For example, firearms and improved sexual assault laws here in Canada. Okay. However, what made Kim Campbell lost her job as prime minister was that she really didn't focus on Canadian jobs or the economy. Okay, she really focused on the Canadian debt, how Canada was losing so much money and had all these debt problems, but she didn't really focus on the people. Okay, people wanted jobs, and she didn't really focus on jobs. Okay, she also didn't talk about or refuse to discuss social programs in Canada. Okay, as you can see, our friend here, Kim Campbell, wasn't really pleasing the people. She wasn't really pleasing Canadians. Okay, as a result, in the next federal election, Kim Campbell was not voted again as Prime Minister. So that's a little story about Kim Campbell. Again, what made Kim Campbell significant was that she was the first female Prime Minister of Canada. Okay, first one. Again, her name will pop up again. State why she was significant. Okay. Questions at this point? Any questions? Anything make sense so far? Anything? Any confusions at all? Can everyone still hear me?
No.
No questions? Yes, everything's good.
No questions.
Okay, excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, class. Yes, it is time to go over questions on assignment 8, number 8. So if you want to turn in your workbook to assignment 8, I will go over some of these key questions and I'll let you know what I'm looking for. Okay, assignment 8. This is your last assignment for the history half. Okay, last one. However, there's 8 more assignments in the geography half. Okay, so don't get too excited. Okay, we're only halfway there. Okay, we're halfway there. We're doing great. Okay, class, everyone's doing great. Okay, but this is the last assignment for the history part. So, assignment 8 out of 16 marks. Okay, 16 big marks. Okay, question number 1 states, when was the Canada Act signed? When was the Canada Act or the Constitution Act signed? So I'm looking for a date. A date or a year. What year was the Constitution Act or the Canada Act signed? Okay. And what did this act do for Canada? Again, why was it important? Its goal, its purpose, etc. Okay, so 2 part out of 3 marks. Okay, I'll say it again. When was the Canada Act signed? What year? What dates? Etc. And what did this act do for Canada? Okay, so the Canada Act of Canada states that da 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 da. The goal of the Canada Act was to da da da, etc. Okay, two-part question right there. Question number two. Question number two. Do you think, yes, I'm asking you, do you think North America, which consists of Canada, United States, and Mexico, okay, do you think North America will ever include other countries in the free trade agreement, otherwise known as NAFTA? Why or why not? Okay, so this is an opinion question. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer for this one. Okay, kind of like free marks I'm giving out right now. However, you must explain why or why not. So you can be like, yes, I do think okay, Canada, United States, and Mexico will include other countries in our free trade agreement. Or you can say no, no, I do not think Canada, United States, or Mexico will include other countries. And tell me why. Okay, right here, why? Because of this reason, because of that reason. Okay, no right or wrong answer here, okay, class? However, you must explain why you think that reason. Okay? Again, I'll read the question one more time. Do you think, okay, again, this is an opinion question. Do you think North America, Canada, United States, and Mexico will ever include other countries in the free trade agreement? Why or why not? Yes or no is what the question is asking. And why? Explain why. Because, why? Because I think this or feel this way, or etc. Show me your thinking. Okay? Again, always write in full, complete sentences. Include lots of details. That way you can receive full marks. Okay? Let's move on to the next question. Alright, here. Yes. Look at this one right here. We got a chart. A chart. I have 10 marks. 10 marks. Ooh, big one. Okay. Everyone needs to listen carefully for this one. Okay? Question number 3 states, complete a chart on the next page. Well, okay, which is this page, okay? So you need to complete this chart. Okay? As you can see here, okay, class, on the left-hand side, it states Canadian politician, okay? It states Mackenzie King, Pierre Trudeau, our friend Brian Mulroney, our Governor General Gene Sev, and our Governor General Adrena Clarkson. Okay, there's 5 of these names. I will repeat: Mackenzie King, Pierre Trudeau, Brian Mulroney, Gene Sev, and Adrena Clarkson. Okay, this is what you need to do. The question asks, give your thoughts. Give your thoughts about this person and his and her place in Canadian history with regards to the details provided in this course material. Okay, so what you need to do, okay, class, is that with these 5 Canadian politicians, prime ministers, and Governor General of Canada, you need to give your thought. What do you think? Okay, show me your opinion. What do you think of these individuals? Okay, in terms of their place in Canadian history. Why? Okay, so for example, let's go to Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau. You can be like, I think Mr. Pierre Trudeau was a fantastic man because he cared about Canadian society. during the Quebec Revolution, okay? Or for Mackenzie King, you can be like, for example, I think Mackenzie King is a wonderful man, a caring individual, because he created measures such as the baby bonus, the victory bond, unemployment insurance act. He cared for the people. Okay, something like that. That's what the question is asking. Or it could be like, I don't like Mr. Pierre Trudeau because of this reason. Or I disagree of what Pierre Trudeau did. I think Jean Sèvres was a wonderful woman because she was this. I think Gina Clarkson, again, was another wonderful woman because she did this. Okay? Again, give me your thought. What do you think of the person? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. However, okay, class, you must answer giving your thought. Give me what you think. Give me your opinion about these 5 individuals and relating it back to course material. Okay? Again, if it doesn't make sense or if you have any difficulties, just let me know. Okay? Are there any questions? Questions at the moment? As we come to near the end of today's class. Okay, we do have a few minutes left. So does anyone have any questions, any difficulties with your assignments? Any questions? Again, if I move on to my next slide, again, you can see here my comment sheet. Okay, again, please note that there are 8 assignments for the history half and 8 more assignments in the geography half. Again, according to my math skills, those are 16 assignments altogether. Okay, please note that all assignments 1 to 16 needs to be attempted and completed in order for you to write the test. Okay, you must complete all assignments on to write the test. Okay, however, if you finish all their history assignments, you can write their history tests. Okay, depending on what you need. Some students may only need the history credit or the geography credit, etc. Okay, so again, please note right here, there's 8 assignments. Please note the values. I will calculate it and put it in a percentage for you so that you can see. Again, when you submit your assignments, I will give you feedback and let you know how you're doing and how you can improve. Okay, again, it also has all my contact info as well. Okay, any questions before we wrap things up for tonight? Please note that next week, okay, week 5, next week, we're back to our normal time slot. There's no more changes and switches. I'm with you again on Tuesday, 8 to 9, and again on Thursday, 8 to 9. This comes to a conclusion. History is now done. Okay, we are now done the history half of this course. Okay, for all you historians and love looking at Canadian history, we're now finished, done. Okay, we're looking at geography next week. Okay, which means that we'll move on to lesson 4, then lesson 5. Okay, next week is our last week together before the Christmas and holiday break. So again, I please do encourage you to work on those assignments, whether it's on assignment 2, assignment 5, or assignment 8. Okay, continue to work on those assignments. Again, please submit them to me. That way I can mark it and give you feedback and let you know how you're doing. Okay, again, if you're stuck or have questions, don't be upset. Don't be discouraged. I'm only one phone call away, one email away, one Facebook message away. Again, remember, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. That is my goal. Okay, and we will get through this together. Okay, again, like always, I will post this lesson on my YouTube channel at Wasa. Okay, you can also find this lesson again on the NNEC archive page as well. Okay. Are there any last questions, comments, concern as we wrap things up? Okay. Yes, Wausau staff do have their Christmas party lunch potluck tomorrow. So most teachers won't be in office tomorrow, give or take. Just keep that in mind. Okay, if there's no more questions, I want to thank everyone for joining me here tonight, here at Wausau and Sioux Lookout. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am a teacher for this course. We did have some technical difficulties. Somehow my smartboard screen and my computer just shut off and didn't want to work, but got that to be fixed. Again, if there's no questions, hope everyone have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see everyone next week. Thank you.